The opponent is in the tank, and I watch the counter go down, and I'm like, oh, please fold, please fold.
Hey YouTube.
G'day poker people, my name's Lee Betts and I'm a professional poker player. About 2 years ago I quit my full-time day job to pursue my passion as a poker player, and right now I'm playing 200 NL online cash games, and we're going to go over a session that I played today. I've just wrapped up my second poker session for the day, a total of 1,512 hands of poker. In terms of results on the session, honestly, I haven't even looked at them myself yet. I thought we could do that together live and get a genuine reaction. But before we hop over and see what those live results were, I want to do my gameplay grade now before I really even have an idea of how much I won or lost, just because that sort of will tilt me, I think. So in terms of my gameplay grade, I'm going to go with an A grade. I really do think that I was focused in, paying attention during this session. Maybe even the fact I knew I was doing a vlog, like live, sort of like kicks me, like, don't embarrass yourself in front of all these people, Lee. I mean, come on, these are your subscribers. The degree of difficulty today was pretty easy just because I was running really hot. Can't pat yourself on the back too much if it was a pretty cruisy day. I do think part of the reason it was so cruisy because I was paying attention. I sort of didn't make any mistakes that put me in a tough spot to begin with, which can be the case sometimes. Today wasn't like that, it sort of was on easy mode, but I'm glad I didn't mess it up at the very least. Okay, so I think I figured out how we're finally going to do this. I still haven't looked at the results. Hopefully when I do this, we'll be able to see them at the same time. There you go. Wow, massive win on the day, 1,029. Whew. Yeah, I mean, I expected a big win. Maybe I stacked people more than at times than I even remembered because, yeah, I didn't quite think I ran that well. But yeah, I mean, hey, who's not happy to find out they won $1,000? So there you go, pretty stoked with those results, but we got one of the more interesting hand histories I did play today that I really want to run over with you guys, and then I'll chuck it in a sim and see what the equilibrium play is, because honestly, not quite sure myself. I want to share it with you guys, and let's get into it. So the action starts off on a tight aggressive middle position. I go ahead and open it up to 6, then I'm on the button with King Jack of clubs. I go ahead and 3-bet here. I don't really play a strategy where I cold call to a single raiser. Sometimes I cold call if it's like gonna go multi-way, or usually I play 3-bet or fold pre, and in that instance you definitely want to go ahead and 3-bet King Jack suited. If you were mixing in some cold calls, I could see potentially doing it with a hand like this, but that's not the strategy I've been playing lately. So I go ahead and 3-bet it up to 18, and the action gets back to MP, and they throw in a call. So we go heads up to a flop, which is ace queen 5 with 2 diamonds. The opponent checks it over to me. I've talked about it on the vlog previously about the validity of just c-betting your entire range as a 3-better on an ace high board, just because you're going to represent all the strong aces, and it helps balance out your range with some bluffs when you do have a hand like King Jack. So I decided to do that in this instance. I went ahead and bet 13, which it's only a third the size of the pot, but still pretty big. I probably could just, achieve the same thing by betting, 10 or 11, but that's only a slight nitpick. I sort of went with a range bet here and chose 1/3, and the action's back on the opponent, and they threw in the call. So we get to see a turn, which is the Queen of Spades, putting out backdoor spades. The opponent checks it over to me, and now I think this is where the hand gets really interesting, and I'm really not sure what I should be doing with my range here, because I'm going to have a lot of strong hands here. I could definitely have the ace king, I could even have full houses, pocket aces, ace queen, and I actually do have a few queens as well. Like if I'm 3-betting, King Jack of clubs, I'm probably 3-betting King Queen of clubs, right? And like I explained earlier, I'm just range betting on the flop, so I'm going to have those hands. So when I go ahead and bet here, it's going to look very, very strong because the opponent's going to know that I have a lot of those hands in my range, and I really want to use a bluff. I want to make money when they fold, and I actually think this is a spot where they're going to fold a lot. A lot of their hands that will have easily defended on the flop are going to be put in a bit of a tough spot. Ace Jack offsuit, ace 2 suited, something like that. It's going to put a lot of pressure on them if I keep betting, and I want to do that with this hand because it does block my opponent's most likely Queen X combinations. The fact that we block it so hard, I really think this is a good hand to use as a bluff candidate. Curious to see what the solver says later. For sizing, I chose 36, then the opponent threw it in the call, so not quite what we were hoping for, but we're still off to the river, which is the 2 of spades. The opponent checks it over to me, and this is the street I'm most curious to see what the sim says. In game, I thought everything I thought about on the turn, about blocking my opponent's strongest queens, still true here. I think it's very likely my opponent does have a hand like ace jack, or maybe even a slow played ace king, something like that. And it's like, I can put so much pressure on them by ripping it all in here, representing a strong queen, representing full house, or even representing backdoor spades. There's definitely a hand I can have here, king jack of spades, stuff like that. So it's just going to be a spot where I will have a lot of value hands, and I think my opponent might see that, and they might fold a lot of their range here. So in that case, I definitely want to balance it out with bluffs, and I still think this is one of the best hands to do it with. I decided to rip it all in. Super curious to hear what the sim has to say about this though, so we'll get into that soon. The opponent is in the tank, and I watched the counter go down, and I'm like, oh, please fold, please fold. And then they did fold, so absolutely stoked we did get this bluff through, and as you can tell, ran hot on today's session, but we're going to hop into the sim and see if I did make a mistake from an equilibrium standpoint, so let's go. So the sim's already done. It only took 17 seconds to run, and I'm assuming that's because it's a middle position versus button and 3-bet pot, which means there's actually not that many combinations of cards to go over. So pretty happy with that. Saved a bunch of time there. So as usual, I locked the out of position player to check, which I definitely think they're going to do in a 3-bet pot when the action's on me here. Here we go. The sim just likes betting my entire range for 1/3 pot size. I gave them the option to go 80% pot, and it really doesn't do that option hardly ever. So that's pretty much what I assumed, and happy to see that, you know, I'm not a total fish. I'm doing some things right. So I go ahead and bet a third, and then the opponent, they do actually have a few raises here, even with some of the offsuit ace-king combinations that I gave them, because I do think they might flat at some frequency, particularly a tighter opponent, and they're raising with some like bluffs, like king 10 and flush draws, so that's not what they did in this instance though. They did throw in the call, then the turn was the queen of spades, pairing that queen up, and I locked them to check again, is probably what most opponents are going to do in this spot. Check it over, now the action's on me, and I gave it the 2 different bet size options, and yet again it does prefer the smaller one, 55% pot here, including with king jack of clubs, although it does like mixing in a larger bet with like only 6% of the overall range, but a pretty wide proportion of that comes from the king queen, king jack. Definitely, if you're going to keep bluffing with this hand, which the sim does like doing, it prefers using the 55% pot. So pretty happy I got that one correct, and that's what I did in game. And then the opponent here is hardly ever raising. Did give them the option to raise, but they're hardly ever taking it. Like sometimes they'll do it with a queen, but like even with most of their trips, they're just calling. And the river was the 2 of spades. So the opponent goes ahead and checks again. Now we're back on me here, and we have 2 different, well, we have 1 bet size and 1 check back option. And here we go with king queen of clubs. It's a 4% all in, and I should be checking this hand back. It does not like bluffing with this hand. In fact, like at a very low frequency, it likes bluffing, but most of the time it's checking back. It prefers bluffing with the king 10 combinations. I guess it's because king jack actually, and I didn't mention this when I went over the hand, king jack actually does have some showdown value, just because the front door flush draw missed, and the opponent could easily have like 10-9 of diamonds or something like that. So yeah, we do actually have a bit of showdown value, and I guess it prefers using a hand with less showdown value, like king 10 here. But yeah, that's really the only bluffing hand it's using. Actually, that's not true, because it is using a fair bit of the offsuit king jack combinations as bluffs. So there you go. This river bluff was not solver approved, but when we're playing poker, we do have to think about how we can deviate from the equilibrium play to try to maximally exploit the opponent. But I think maybe this was a good spot to deviate from that anyway, to exploit an opponent who I did label as tight aggressive. Maybe they're a bit tighter, maybe they're a bit more timid to get it in. And we'll have a look here at what they're meant to defend the all-in with. Yeah, they actually are meant to fold most of their aces to the all-in. I guess it's because that river bet range is so strong and it has queens and flushes. And yeah, they're actually really only defending flushes and trips themselves, with like very few ace-x combinations. So the fact that the opponent folded an ace on the river, probably not that bad. And if they're only meant to be defending with queens and flushes, then it's actually probably not a spot where the opponent is actually overfolding to my all-in. So yeah, probably not even a good spot to go for the overboard with the exploit bluffs. Most tight opponents probably will fold an ace on the river, but if you get someone who will call with, you know, ace king on the river, then yeah, probably not a good spot to try and go overboard with the bluffs like I have. So there you go. So there you go, there's a sim on the hand, and I'm actually really stoked that I ran it because I didn't realise that Ace King was meant to be a fold on the river for the out of position player in that dynamic, and so if I did get them off of that hand, it's like not that impressive because they're not really meant to defend it anyway. Not only did I learn that, but I think if I'm in the out of position, I can pretty happily make some of these bigger laydowns when my opponent does put in aggression across these streets because it doesn't even need to be defended at that frequency, particularly when I'm going to have queens in my range, particularly when I'm going to have flushes in my range as the out of position player. But as the in-position player as well, I don't really need to go that crazy with bluffs just because my opponent does have the stronger hands they can call down with. And really, they're just going to call down with them regardless. You don't need to go overboard with the bluffs. And I did hear a bit accidentally kind of. So definitely can learn from all of that going forward in the poker games. If you like the content that you saw here, hit the subscribe button. Also, leave a comment. Give me your interpretation of what the sim said, how you would play the hand. Always curious to get a discourse going with all of you guys. And hit that thumbs up button as well. For now, I'm out of here. Peace.